All right, so welcome to workshop 4. To get us started, here's a quick screen of all the deliverables that we have. So you've completed phase 1 and phase 2 with the ideation and customer feedback. You should now be working on your business plan. And then you have your technical evaluation and your final pitch, which is on March 6th. So all of this information, again, can be found in the participant guide. So if we keep sending that to you to answer the questions, just go read there first. If you see something or something's hard to find, just let us know, and we'll fix that as well. So we have the judging criteria here. So this again is in the judging criteria document that's found in the participant guide. For today's lesson, we're covering the product demo and the technical interview component of this. So for the product demo, it's 10 points and the technical interview is 25. So we're covering roughly a third of the worth of the cup, giving you some pointers here today. And as you can see here, the business plan is also 25 points. So make sure you start working on that soon. Okay, so we have 3 parts for today's workshop. So the first point is that I'm going to go through some technical samples and some examples on how to do well on this section. Afterwards, we're going to our 2 wonderful guests who are going to do breakout rooms on design and coding. So depending on what you feel your team would like advice on, and then we'll follow it up with some Q&A as well. Okay, technical samples. So the biggest thing for your prototype is that it should be a natural progression from everything that you've worked on, right? So you started off with some ideas and some research, you got some user feedback at this point, so your prototype should just naturally come next, right? If you're hearing feedback that your users want a mobile app, there's no reason you should be building a desktop app and vice versa, right? So a large portion of the cup is actually for the judges to see, does your prototype solve the problem at hand? And we'll talk a little bit about how to impress the judges, but this is the fundamental question that you're asking. If you build a really cool app, but it doesn't follow from the ideas and feedback, you're not going to do very well. Likewise, if you aren't the most technically savvy team and you are just going to prototype, you can do very well if this flow is very natural and you define things clearly. So let's go through some examples. Okay, so on the left here, I have a bike that represents a prototype and then a real bike that's code, right? So if 2 teams show up, one drew out a bike and one built a physical bike, it's pretty obvious that the team that built the physical bike is going to score better, right? They figured out how moving parts are going to work. They sourced the parts, they built it, they tested it. They can show the bike working, right? So when people ask, do you need code or is a prototype fine? You can look to this analogy for guidance. But that doesn't mean that coding is going to, the top teams are necessarily going to build the best coded product, right? Because it's really hard to build a bike from scratch, right? If we gave you the challenge of build a functioning bike, it might take you a couple of months and very difficult challenges of sourcing parts and figuring out how gears actually work without actually taking parts from a different bike, right? But the quality of prototype is also very important. So here's a picture from the BBC. They did a study about how it's actually very challenging to draw bikes. And comparing it to somebody who used some kind of computer software to draw it out. So if 2 people show up with prototypes, one looks like this and one looks like that, right? We can tell who's going to score better. So it still means you need to put effort and make things look good. But at the same time, you want to build and sort of demonstrate the right thing. So if the goal is to help people get around, a bike is much more useful than a Trojan horse. So even if you build a physical Trojan horse and show up with it, people are going to ask, why is this a thing? This doesn't seem very practical, right? So you're going to lose quite a number of points, even though this is quite the engineering marvel, right? Because you didn't demonstrate that natural flow from ideation to user feedback to actually building it, right? So if this bike is just your lack of drawing ability, but there was a lot of research and design or whatever that went into it, that's okay, and that's going to do better than somebody who put a lot of work into building something not super useful. So the last part is that it's also good to demonstrate the different features that you have. So if we have a Tech Under 20 Cup team that shows up with a drawing of a full bike versus building a wheel, you're probably going to do better with just the drawing of the full bike, because we understand what you're going towards. We understand the functionality you're providing. But in the ideal world, you show up with a built tire and the drawing, right? So you say, we want to do this whole thing. This is our vision. This is everything that our product aspires to. But we built this small piece of functionality to demonstrate what we're capable of, right? So this might be, I don't know, a gamification feature, right, that you put your effort on. This might be a small part of your app that you think is super essential for it to be successful. So this is the ideal outcome, right? Is that you demonstrate your engineering and coding capabilities with a small but highly effective feature, but showcase your whole vision to the judges. Does anybody have any questions? You can write it out in the chat.
I do have a question regarding completing features and just that concern.
Yep, so what's the question?
So my concern is it all right if, due to lack of coding prowess, for example, you choose to opt out of kind of like extra features you would want to include in your prototype or app or robot, whatever it may be, or will that still be considered something that we should avoid?
So in your prototyping, it's good to demonstrate all the functionality that will compel a user to use the product, right? So if you're making a food delivery app, right, it's if your prototype doesn't have an option to actually connect businesses and have them sort of track their orders, we'll ask the question of, did you think this through or did you not have time, right? If you draw everything out and demonstrate it, that's a great start. If you don't have the technical experience to build it all out, we still recommend that you try to do something, right? And a large part of the technical interview is actually sort of self-directed, in the sense of um, the judges are going to ask you questions like, what's the feature that you're most proud of, right? And you can certainly speak to the prototype, but it's a lot more compelling when your team talks about whether it's learning how to code from the beginning and sort of running into issues with setting up a project, versus, or if you're more experienced, you can talk about implementing this cool feature as well. So so you will benefit in the technical interview if you push yourself to learn something new as well. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Also, I don't mean to contradict it also. If I'm saying anything wrong, let me know. But today I'm actually going to be talking about some pretty like high quality interactive prototyping as well. So if you're not 100% in the place where you're ready to code, you might want to kind of learn about what interactive prototyping is like, and kind of get a feel for that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. All right, so the next part Oh, before we do that, let me go to another screen. Okay, so one of the things we wanted to talk about is sort of giving you a live example of how we would assess a certain prototype. So to talk about a project that the Tech Under 20 team has been working on called Passport, we can sort of walk through it. So the goal of Passport is to help chapter leaders. So you've probably met a number of chapter leaders to help manage the chapter members in their school, the Tech Under 20 members. So you can sort of see some of the features that exist here already, right? So there's a filtering by school. You can see events. You can see some other functionality. And this information came from chapter leaders and doing some interviews with them. So naturally, when you're sort of explaining a screen, preceding it, you should be able to show some of the forms, some of the quotes, some of the information that you've talked about. So when you show a screen like this, you can say, okay, what information is important to a chapter leader? Okay, we have the event title up here with the school. We have the student names. We can check who's here. We have some kind of filtering and search capabilities. These should all directly come sort of from your brainstorming and then validation with your users, right? Because if you're a chapter leader and you don't really care who's part of your club, right? We don't have a reason to include the screen, right? But you probably do, and that was confirmed during sort of user interviews. So the alternative is maybe we didn't design the view right the first time, right? What if they want more of a tile grid and this sort of overwhelmingly had a more positive user response? So that's another important factor to exhibit, is that you can actually show the judges the iterations that you went through and the designs, right? Because they want to see the progress you've made, because it's very rare that you get it right on the first time. So you can even show multiple iterations of your prototype and say, we started off with this, we did some user studies, we talked to, let's say, 100 users, we didn't actually, and after doing some A/B tests, 90% prefer this view for these reasons, right? And that's a compelling story to tell. Likewise, here's a sort of a Figma getting started thing. If you're going to do your designs in Figma or another tool, again, every feature should have a reason behind it. So when you show a screen that says chats, right? Why are you having a chat feature, right? And it's not that the judges are sort of questioning your reasoning. They just want to know what evidence you have, right? And some things you won't have time to validate. So you say, this is still a hunch that we have, that chats are useful, right? As opposed to saying, when we talked to users and they tried to use the prototype, they just wanted to message the delivery driver, let's say for your food app. And you can sort of demonstrate your progress throughout the different screens that you design, right? So that's the main thing. So I think what we'll do next, if we don't have questions, we'll do the breakout rooms with our speakers and let them introduce themselves. And then we'll go to the technical interview scoring and some of the questions thereafter. So let's go back to our slides. All right, so I'll let each of our speakers introduce themselves. We'll get started with Amy.
Yeah, for sure. I'm super excited and happy to be here. I think Tech Under 20 is doing some pretty awesome stuff, and I'm already really impressed with what you guys are talking about. It's very relevant to the design world. It's very real and very true. So I hope that you guys are able to take what you're doing now and realize that, you know, it's relevant in the real world if you want to go into this type of industry. So I'm a product designer. That means that I use user experience design and user interface design, and I put it together and I create digital products for businesses to solve their problems. The difference between a UX and UI designer versus product design means that the types of solutions that I'm creating focus on things like financial viability, actually, you know, being a solid revenue stream for the businesses, and actually, you know, benefiting them more than just creating something pretty. So, and that's kind of the stuff that you're interested in, then I would love to have a chat with you today and answer your questions and teach you more about what I do.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. And I'm going to mispronounce your name, but
everyone does, don't worry. It's Gurkirat.
Right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gurkirat. I'm a senior developer at RBC. So pretty much what I do is like just code the entire time. So like a bunch of microservices I'm working on, and also anything that, like, for example, a product designer or UI UX designer would show us would then be implemented into an actual web page. So yeah, a lot of my background goes with like JavaScript applications, Node.js, Java, and all that stuff. So if you guys need like help, anything, that I can probably help you guys out today. If you guys have any questions related to those.
Okay, awesome. So hopefully that gives you some context on who our guests are. So we're going to create 2 breakout rooms for you to join. So room 1 will have Amy in there, and then in room 2, Gurkirat. So let's just open them up. So feel free to join either of the rooms. So room 1 for Amy and design, and room 2 for Gurkirat and coding. Can everybody move into the rooms?
Hi, sorry, how do you join the breakout room?
You should have gotten a pop-up that says join breakout room, or it should be on your bottom tab.
I don't think I see it.
Okay, which room did you want to go to? I can.
I want to go to room 2 for coding, please.
Okay, sure. Okay, so all of you should have access to this document. It's the TU20 Cup judging criteria. So it's linked in the participants guide, but this is good to look over for expectations of what will happen, what you need to deliver. So I'll quickly talk about the technical interview here. So as part of the cup, I'll just scroll down here. So as part of the cup, you'll be expected to do 2 presentations the day of. So you'll have your pitch that you're going to do. Most of those are going to be in the morning, and then you'll have the technical interviews scattered throughout the day. So the pitch will, all things considered, roughly take 30 minutes, and then the technical interview roughly 40 minutes. So in the technical interview, you're going to sort of showcase what you've built, give a little bit of business context of what you're building it, but it's more of a conversation with your technical judges. So you'll be placed in a group of 2 technical judges. They'll sort of ask you to talk through things. It's less of an interview and more of a conversation, but you do want to show off what your team has built and sort of explain the technology and everything that you've gone through. So it's more of a hands-on approach with what you've built. So the main things that sort of from a pure technology side that they're looking at is your MVP technically sound? So from that perspective, can you get the outcomes that you want from your minimal viable product? So if you need to test whether or not people are going to order food from your food delivery app, does your prototype, whether it's coded or not coded, does it allow you to test that, right? Does it allow you to have a clear next step with what you've built, right? Afterwards, the next 2 questions are sort of scaling and next steps, right? So let's say you started coding some things, right? Or you've mainly done some prototyping. Is what you've built sort of feasible to actually implement? So if you're promising that you can deliver food in 5 minutes anywhere in Canada, right? That's not really feasible. So from that perspective, you're going to not do very well on that portion, right? So if you're promising that you're using AI on the blockchain that uses cryptocurrency to create bots that are going to hack something, right? Your technical judges will ask you to slow down and think about what you just said, and instead ask you practically what your prototype or your solution can do. And then the last part is sort of thinking critically about what you've actually built, right? So you should be self-aware of what you've built, whether from a prototype or coding perspective. And it's completely okay if you end up building less than what you imagined you could, right? So this is a learning opportunity and a learning journey. So you want to make sure that the team can sort of talk about that, right? And talk about some of the limitations, some of the strengths, and what are the next steps that you can do. So below here, there's a couple of questions. So going through certain features, iterations, and user feedback. So we don't forget all the thinking that went into the prototype, right? Just because you wrote 10,000 lines of code doesn't mean you should forget why you wrote it. So this is technical, but it still assumes that you're building the right thing, because the most common reason why technology projects take a long time is not because of the technology is hard, is because there's miscommunication or you build the wrong thing. So the judges are still going to ask you lots of questions about it, but they actually want to see and sort of virtually, not necessarily play around with your technology, but be able to have you walk through them and ask questions and sort of have a spontaneous discussion based on it. So once again, you'll get 25 points for your technical interview. Going back to the original point, if you can code something up, awesome. If you don't have the skills, we would still recommend you try to learn something as a learning opportunity. But if not, try to build the right thing and sort of have comprehensive prototypes demonstrate what you've learned throughout the process about your user and your product. Okay. So does anybody have any questions? So will all members be required to speak at the technical interview? We won't require everyone to speak, but I think that it's good to have everybody involved. Sometimes it's a little harder in groups of 6 that some of you are in. But likewise with the main presentation, it's good that everybody is involved and everybody has sort of practiced presenting or having a conversation. So if somebody in the technical interview is working more on the business or research side of things, there will still be questions that are relevant, sort of as we saw there. So those people can step up and answer 1 or 2 of those questions, but mainly it'll probably be the people who've done the development or design talking. All right. If there are no further questions, thank you everybody for joining. We'll have the recording sort of with my component posted in case you want to rewatch it. And thanks again to our guests for their demos and sharing all their experiences. Once again, the next deadline is on the 21st for the business plan, and then the technical aspects are the day of the cup. So hope everybody is enjoying the experience, and feel free to reach out on Discord or email if you have any questions.